Next up, in the study of Wing Tsun's centerline theory, we've gone over there's a centerline or a central line or a center line, tray, all, or and gone over the shared lines, and other martial arts have a set. I think I'm gonna throw up something from Ed Parker's Kempo, Kung Fu Karate later on. So there's some kind of rectangular shape in front of us, defined by the fact that my arms go up and down, and they have a maximum distance. So there's some rectangle here because of that. Now, when we start taking what we call the Centerline, which is the line that's always the center between us, Centerline, and then we've gone over now, the Wing line is only on the surface of the body, the Wing line, and the Wing line is drawn when you go like this, and you make a line for the axis, center of mass, right? And then I'm going to pause there for a second. Center of mass is a point. It's the center of gravity. It's the center of mass. And it can move around if you change your oomph, but it is a point. But we use center of mass referring to the hanging by a golden thread from the center of the universe. We're hanging on a thread. So there's a line that we're hanging on. That's also the line that we would rotate on as an axis. But it's not really an axis. We're hanging on the end of a thread all the way up there. Okay, moving on. So I'm fine with Sifu Jason says center mass, and he means the vertical midline through the axis of rotation is another way to define it. Or I'm going to define it by a golden thread hanging from the sky, so we don't have to worry about that rotation difference. Same line. Next up, Sifu Jason mentioned hanging a sheet between the two of us. A sheet is a plane, like this picture of Professor Ting Chu. That is a flat surface. We call that a plane. Okay, that's 3D features, but you get the idea, right? Length and width. We're not looking at the height of this thing. Now it's height and depth, but not width, right? So again, the box is made up of these planes. Thank you, Professor. Sheet is a plane, not a line, but we'll call it a line. Fine. Now, next up, we're looking at using these for our fighting art. And so the recent one had to do with a turn. This is going to relate to some other threads where people are talking about a bob and a weave and a slip and all this stuff. And you were talking about bending the spine if you want, right? So you have to take all of those features that you are claiming and put them into your attacking energy vectors. That gets into many lines that you have to work with. All right. So we've come down to the 3 lines. Let's get back on track here, Sifu Cox. So we have the line coming out of the body that is a right angle to the shoulder line. It's our first personal center line. So let me get a tool. Let's get a tool going here. This might be cool. So I have my shoulders, and they're like this, and you can see that my lines are pointing out my fingertips here. And this is what we call square. They're both pointed forward. My shoulders are square. There's a flat plane. Foily side might look good, right? And then if I use some width from my trunk and I connect the hips, they're also on the same plane. So if I move my hips, I move my trunk, right? If I twist in the middle, I twist my trunk. So that is different. If we watch this plane that I've created, and I'll set Go climbing stance. If I twist in the middle, my reflective surface is going to remain in the same spot. So I'm basically taking it a hit and I'm turning and it's bouncing off with my turn. If I take the lungting system, I actually swing on the edge of a gate out here. They're called gates, right? Called gates. So we have sets of gates, right? So if I hinge on my gate to 45, a portion of my plane has moved out of straight attack lines. When I twist, it's a much smaller portion. If I move over to the side onto one leg, prove it, I proved it, I've moved over and I can come back and I can move over. So there's two different types of turns. Both are valid. We're not arguing about what's better yet. All right, now I don't have two things here. Next up, we've defined now the personal center line of the shoulders, and we have low punches too and high punches. So the box has a bottom and a top. So we have a lower personal center line for punching. Pow. So I could block on the upper personal center line and punch on the lower personal center line and come in. If I'm using my center lines. So if I turn like this, my personal center line from my shoulders is this way, and my punch is now outside of this thing that we've defined. Yes? So that is called the central line with an AL by the TWC people. And so next up, my enemy has their personal set of central lines, center lines. And maybe they use a combo of central and center lines. So I want to make sure that I can point my center and then maybe get slightly out of the way of their center. So now their center is having to deal with one of my surfaces and my other center is still on my personal center line because my personal center line is the strongest line from my shoulders. That's my strongest, longest punch. You guys like to rotate it over. It's a little shorter that way, but it's the same line. Okay? If I'm using the center, personal center line theory. What? Invisible quote student? Oh, let's rewind then. So why not do this? Why are we rejecting that to begin with in the WT centerline theory? So we want to maximize both of our arms. And as has been defined, the central line, when the arms are like this, off of this shoulder, so if I step to you like this, that is the outer edge of the length. If I start going this way, my arm is starting to go backwards. Now it's coming back this way. So this, right here to here, that is the length of my arc. And so I can turn a little bit. And if you watch Sifu Jason, he doesn't turn his back. He only turns within the 45 degrees that still protects your back. But it does expose some of the flank. Why do we just have the one in WT? Because to be stronger, a weaker or smaller person needs to use their velocity to back up their hits. Their arms, their leg strength. This is not enough. They need velocity. They need to jump into you. And if you're going to use velocity and your arm is bent at all, it's not going to work. So we need to create a system of getting the elbows behind the arms to catch the velocity. And when they hit, they're going to get pushed back into a stance. So that is a different mechanism. Just a slight model so you can see it. It's not how it's going to look in a fight. I'm modeling the internal energy structures. It's different. Everybody else goes out. They brace themselves. Maybe they could take a kick as they do something, right? They risk getting kicked in the back from a hooking kick, right? Because maybe they can turn and deal with it. They count on footwork to avoid stuff because they can see it. We're not counting on any of that at first. We're counting on coming out, poking them in the eyes if our hands are open, punching them if we're ready. Yes? So we have this velocity. So our centerline theory is only going to deal with this averages of the lines coming forward. Our bong sound moves like that because it's going forward. If it's going to break here, it doesn't fold up and come this way anymore. There's a triangle right there. Right here, it's pushing me off of that energy line so they can fall off. I'm not going to hold on to the line and try to strengthen and wedge them. Then I'm going to need to use some kind of strong stance. I'm trying to get pushed over, and I'm going to bring my leg up too. My center line, their personal center line. What if they come at me with the same stuff I'm doing? What if we both collide? Then that is where we have somebody who's as good as us, as we say, and we have to start matching them. That's where Lat Sao and Chi Sao come in. The point of interaction between my personal center line and its very narrow power band, because I'm attacking like this, my center line on the centre line. I'm going to try to line up my personal center lines then with the centre line, because I'm going to be attacking down the centre line. Yeah. Only one set of things I got to deal with. My attacks are going to run into their attacks if they're coming towards me on the same principle. If they try to go around me, they by definition have to take a longer distance. They're not going to be lining their energy up on me until they get over here with their footwork. Unless they stay within the profile theory, which I'll get into next. So if you watch, I really love Sifu Jason's videos. Awesome guy, awesome martial art that he's got. Spotless. When he does a demo, he sometimes steps really far and then he comes underneath and comes back in a demo so we can see it. That's how you train it too, big. But then when he does it against somebody, he stays within his central line, is in this width that is defined as the rectangle box thing. So we're agreeing. Okay, we're agreeing. He is coming forward. He is not sidestepping anything. He is coming forward to the side of the box. And they're starting with a position that's going to go to the side of the box a little more. And that's where I don't like their stuff, because they really risk giving away the flank. But they have a zigzag and the compensation for the flank. Oh, I'm not saying that's a bad martial art. I've said it several times. I think that's the original Yip Man 1950s hard style Shaolin Wing Tsun that he used with the teenagers and the public people that he charged money. He had to keep a different martial art secret. That's our rules. So I think it's a great hard style. I have a version of hard style stuff I teach people that have never done a martial art. Most people show up to Wing Tsun and they want fine tuning. So I'm going to finish with that. The edges, the central line edges, those are where in center line theory you realize I cannot go any farther than this. I need to correct and get both of my arm lines back onto the centre line between me and you. So if I get pushed out of the way, I need to line everything up on the centre line. So I go wrap. My leg is coming up. I don't know if I'm still on camera. Let's do that again. If I get pushed, right? Then you are the enemy. I got pushed. My shoulders have to line up. My hands have to come out. My hips adjust. And I line everything up on the Centerline. I would not purposely move my center off target and eliminate an arm and then correct myself for the power. You can gain a lot of power. I could turn completely away and then come back and hit you, right? I could turn my center off the line and I could go across the line for a swing in power. I do that. We teach it in the Screama, so it doesn't confuse the beginners and intermediates. But where's that in Chisao? And then how does it fit in if you don't have time to do footwork? If you got to get into the closed polygon for in close fighting. Centerline collision. Why do you turn off? Right? So people call it the 5 center lines instead of centerline theory. But what do you do with the 5 center lines? You realign onto the centre line with your 2 or 3 center lines. And then from there, if you get pushed off, you try to, right, like a keel on a boat in stormy waters. The rudder is going to steer the boat, but the keel itself is always grinding through the water too. Right? So our centerline theory is like a keel, and I hit and I get bumped really far like this, right? I'm not going to let this shoulder, right? I'm not going to let this shoulder turn that far, right? I'm going to be like this to that thing that we call the central line in TWC. It doesn't have a name in WT because it's part of our first position. When I do a turn, I point it on the center line. When I do this turn, I'm pointing on the center line. U over there. Not the individual center line, right? Not just the average of the two, right? But when they all come together and become one line again, that center line. Hey, it must be true. Isaiah's here. Center line, that is the middle of everything. Okay.
If I left, then it made no sense. And you tell your friends and they blow your hands. Baby, never mind, 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 never mind. What if I left, then it made no sense. And you tell your friends and they blow your hands. Baby, never mind, never mind, never mind, never mind, never mind, never mind, never mind.